The drama surrounding the Indiana Fever's narrow loss to the Dallas Wings wasn't just about missed shots, it's bad luck, or a single mistake in crunch time. No, this one spiraled into something much deeper, a collision between a battered roster, questionable coaching decisions, and what many fans and even players flat out called corrupt officiating. When Aliyah Boston walked off the floor with a look of visible frustration etched across her face, it wasn't the expression of someone who had simply lost a close basketball game. It was the face of a young star who felt her team's effort, resilience, and fight had been undone, not by talent on the other side, but by forces outside their control. And to understand why this particular loss stung so badly, you have to go back to the days leading up to it. Because this wasn't just a battle against Dallas. This was Indiana trying to hold itself together after disaster ripped through their backcourt. Just one game earlier, in a brutal sequence against Phoenix, the Fever saw their entire point. Guard rotation implode in the span of a night. Cydney Colson, the veteran floor general known for her poise, tore her ACL. Moments later, Aari McDonald, her backup, fractured a bone in her foot. Both injuries were season ending, combined with Caitlin Clark, already sidelined since July, with a groin issue. The Fever were left with no true point guard available. None. 3 guards gone. Just like that, suddenly, what had been a promising season, a team finding its identity with Clark as the face of the franchise, and Boston dominating the paint, now had its offensive engine stripped away. For Indiana, this wasn't theoretical, this was reality. No one to bring the ball up comfortably against pressure, no one to settle the offense when things broke down, no one to manage the tempo. Every possession, every trip down the floor, was about to become a struggle. The locker room knew it instantly. Coaches and players alike spoke about their heartbreak for Colson and McDonald. These weren't just teammates, they were leaders. Good people who had poured themselves into the season. And losing them wasn't just a tactical blow, it was emotional devastation. But the mantra quickly became about honoring them, playing. For them showing the grit they had displayed by keeping the fight alive in their absence. Still, no amount of motivational speeches could disguise what was about to happen next. Because once the ball tipped against Dallas, the ripple effects of losing an entire backcourt became painfully obvious. Indiana turned the ball over 7 times. Dallas converted those mistakes into 27 points, more than a quarter of their entire offensive production. That wasn't just the difference, that was the difference. Every possession became high risk. Every pass felt like threading a needle. Every attempt to initiate an offense turned into a test of survival. The Fever had little choice but to shift. Kelsey Mitchell, their most natural scorer, into the lead guard role. And while Mitchell has always been capable of creating shots for herself and others, this wasn't her game. This wasn't her comfort zone. She was used to playing off the ball, catching in rhythm, finding her spots. But now she had to bring the ball up against traps, break pressure, initiate sets, and still be the one expected to put points on the board. The weight was immense, and Dallas knew it. From the opening minutes, the Wings threw doubles, pressured her. Full court forced her to work for every dribble. Yet Mitchell did what stars do, she responded. 24 points on 7 of 15 shooting, 4 triples. A series of gutsy buckets that dragged Indiana back into a game that at one point looked ready to spiral out of reach. She wasn't perfect. No one could be under that much. Strain. Turnovers happened, rush decisions crept in. But Mitchell's relentlessness, her refusal to fold under the pressure, kept Indiana alive. Even down double digits in the fourth, she buried a deep 3, then motioned furiously to her teammates to dig in on defense, setting up the very run that gave them a chance to win. And yet, as brilliant as Mitchell was, she couldn't do it alone. The Fever's resilience became a team-wide effort. Sophie Cunningham embodied toughness, diving for loose balls, jawing at opponents, draining clutch shots, and letting her fire ignite her teammates. Chloe Bibby gave them 11 points. In just 12 minutes, knocking down every single 3 she took, including a massive dagger that forced Dallas into a timeout. Natasha Howard held the paint like a fortress, pulling down a double-double and blocking 3 shots. Boston herself battled through heavy contact all night, putting up 14 points despite being mauled on possession after possession. Every player, every rotation piece, bought into the fight, and the result was remarkable. Down 17, Indiana stormed back. They outscored Dallas 25-4 in the fourth quarter. That wasn't luck, that was grit, that was heart. That was a team that refused to die. And with 11 seconds left, they had the ball, down by just 1, the upset within reach. The building buzzed with the energy of a comeback story that could have defined their season, and then it slipped away. Coach Stephanie White had a timeout. 11 seconds left, plenty of time to draw up something clean, something structured. Instead, Indiana chose to push. The ball ended up in Mitchell's hands, of course, but she was hounded, contested, forced into a difficult pull-up. The shot missed. Dallas rebounded. White stopped the game with just 1.7 seconds remaining, too late to matter. After the loss, she admitted it flat out. I probably should have used it at the 3-second mark. It was a rare moment of public accountability, but also one that cut deep. Because in a season hanging by a thread, those seconds mattered. That one possession mattered. But even that wasn't the story most fans were talking about when the buzzer sounded. No, the real firestorm erupted around the officiating. The calls or non-calls that had dogged Indiana all night long, the most glaring came in the fourth quarter. Boston fighting for position inside, her arm clamped down by the Dallas center, unable to move. Instead of calling it on the defender, officials whistled Boston. Indiana challenged, confident the replay would overturn such an obvious error. It didn't. The foul stood. Indiana lost not only the call, but their challenge and a timeout. Even broadcasters were stunned. Rebecca Lobo said she expected the whistle to be reversed. Instead, Boston was punished for being fouled. The disbelief on her face said everything. Then came the inconsistency that drove players and fans to the edge. Cunningham hit with a flagrant on a closeout, while Dallas's Paige Buchers had committed a nearly identical play earlier and only had her call upgraded after review. Later, Mitchell took similar contact on a jumper with no whistle at all. White, usually measured, didn't mince words afterward. She said plainly that Aliyah Boston is the worst officiated post player in the league, that Mitchell gets held on every possession without calls, and that the standard simply isn't consistent. Her voice was sharp, angry, unflinching. She was saying what Fever fans had been screaming for weeks. The frustration boiled over visibly on the floor. Cunningham let slip a clear "God damn it" after another questionable whistle. Clark, injured on the bench, clapped sarcastically in the direction of an official after the final buzzer. Even Boston, usually the picture of composure, stepped toward an official mid-game, anger flashing before Clark pulled her back. And when she finally spoke after it was over, her words were as short as they were cutting. We need better focus. Focus. It was both self-critique and coded frustration at everything the team had endured, the injuries, the blown calls, the late-game decisions that stole what should have been theirs. The sting cut deeper because of who they were playing. Dallas is a bottom-3 team. This wasn't Connecticut or New York. This was supposed to be a must-win, a steady-in game in the playoff push. Instead, Indiana slipped to 6th in the standings, their margin for error shrinking as the postseason looms, and so the conversation lingers. Did Stephanie White cost them the game by not calling timeout? Did the referees rob Indiana of a fair chance to win? Was it both? Or, with Clark still sidelined, are the Fever simply being stretched beyond their breaking point? The answers depend on perspective, but the emotion is universal: pain, frustration, the sick feeling of letting something precious slip through your fingers. Aliyah Boston felt it. Kelsey Mitchell lived it. The Fever fan base raged about it. In the WNBA community, watching yet another game marred by controversial officiating added fuel to the fire that something in the league's refereeing system must change. The Fever's fight, their refusal to quit, deserved better. Whether history remembers this as the moment that broke them, or the fire that hardened them, will be decided in the weeks ahead. But one thing is certain: Indiana is no longer just fighting opponents. They're fighting circumstance, fatigue, and a system they no longer believe treats their stars fairly. And in that battle, even the strongest hearts can only hold out so long. So now it's your turn. Should Stephanie White have burned that timeout earlier, or was letting Mitchell push the right call? Do you believe the officiating truly tilted this game, or was it just a rough night at the worst possible time? And more importantly, can Indiana rally with Clark still sidelined, or are we watching the beginning of a painful collapse? Your thoughts below. Hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what comes next in this wild season.